The sheer speed and precision of a large language model create a powerful impression of pure, objective computation. Each blinking character suggests a response born from cold, mathematical logic. The reality behind the interface is an industrial-scale scraping operation. These models are built on datasets derived almost exclusively from historically dominant cultures and standard registers of English. Generative AI functions as a digital mirror, reflecting decades of human preconditioning and historical prejudice back at the user. Our advanced machines inherit and amplify the systemic biases of the traditional human canon by design. Addressing this requires a specific set of analytical tools. Critical frameworks from the humanities, like feminist criticism and postcolonial theory, can be weaponized as algorithmic auditing instruments. The training pipeline illustrates the connection. Classical analog texts from the traditional literary canon are ingested, stripped into binary data, and mathematically integrated into the node network of a neural model. We can treat AI outputs as primary texts, conducting side-by-side comparative analyses to systematically deconstruct the cultural frameworks hidden in the code. Exposing prejudices that are mathematically encoded into an algorithm requires the analytical rigor of the humanities. A gender audit provides a clear starting point. The foundational 1979 text, The Madwoman in the Attic, by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar, offers a useful framework for this test. Gilbert and Gubar identified how patriarchal traditions historically restricted female representation to extreme binaries. Women were framed as either idealized, submissive angels or hysterical, deviant monsters. We can pressure test a modern model by asking it to write a Victorian story about a brilliant scientist who discovers a cure for a deadly disease. When models instantly generate a male protagonist, like a Dr. Edmund Bellamy, they reveal a statistical assumption linking scientific intellect to men. We issue a counterprompt, asking the AI to describe a female character in a Gothic novel. We check the resulting text for evidence of the trembling, pale, angelic trope. While some models show progressive adjustments that grant a character rebellious agency, the gravitational pull of the patriarchal baseline remains visible. These results suggest that generative models often gravitate toward the patriarchal baseline embedded in their 19th century training data. This dynamic extends to race, exposing a common industry assumption known as the scale fallacy. Silicon Valley often operates as if feeding an AI more data inevitably makes it more objective. Massive data volumes actually thicken the density of dominant historical narratives. Inside the model, sheer volume from standard register data compresses and mathematically drowns out marginalized archives. Researchers Sophia Noble and Timnit Gebru warn large language models can act as stochastic parrots, blindly repeating and amplifying existing racial prejudices found in their datasets. We can audit this with a simple prompt. Describe a beautiful woman. Raw or older models lean heavily on Eurocentric phenotypic defaults, utilizing metaphors like fair skin, blonde hair, or the softness of moonlight on marble. When a model outputs qualitative, non-phenotypic descriptions, focusing on intelligence, strength, or poise, it indicates successful human intervention designed to correct algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias replicates colonial standards through a direct architectural inheritance, necessitating active, manual intervention to dismantle. Beyond accidental stereotyping, we must examine deliberate political censorship. Using the framework of new historicism, we have to ask, who controls the official historical narrative inside the machine? W. H. Auden's satirical poem, Epitaph on a Tyrant, provides an ideal test case for a political audit. The experiment involves prompting different regional LLMs, the American OpenAI, and the Chinese model DeepSeek, to rewrite Auden's poem targeting contemporary global leaders. The Chinese model, DeepSeek, readily generates biting, satirical verses about American leadership. It also easily outputs critical verse regarding the Russian leadership. A critical breaking point arrives when prompting DeepSeek about the Tiananmen Square protests or its own state leadership. The model issues an immediate, hard-coded denial. It refuses to generate any content, citing the topic as beyond its current scope. The deliberate, state-aligned erasure of history to maintain epistemological control represents the most dangerous form of algorithmic bias. All human observations, and therefore all datasets, are shaped by specific cultural perspectives. Because all language and meaning are constructed, an entirely unbiased AI model is a mathematical and linguistic impossibility. There is a vital distinction between an ordinary subjective preference and a systemic bias that silences marginalized groups. The goal of literary auditing is to make harmful, invisible biases visible before they are enforced as universal truths. Academic critique alone is insufficient. Pointing out a bias in a lecture hall does not alter the underlying digital architecture. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie warned of the danger of a single story. In the digital age, allowing one cultural narrative to override all others guarantees a new form of systemic erasure. The scale fallacy proved more data is not a solution on its own. It simply reinforces the dominant group. To disrupt this, the data must change. The Global South and marginalized communities must shift from passive downloaders to active, relentless uploaders of their histories. Populating open-source platforms, regional wikis, and digital archives with indigenous knowledge forces algorithms to parse a broader, more representative epistemology. True technological equity requires marginalized voices to actively flood the machine with the diversity of human experience, refusing to be silenced by the architectural weight of the canon.